Hi class, it's Mrs. Kane here with your next e-learning lesson. I'm happy to say that this is the final new material in the entire school year. So I'm going to be teaching today about degrees and angles, and then the next video will be a review of the Unit 8 stuff that I've taught so far, and then there will be an assessment and we'll get ready for the final exam. So the last topic I'm going to talk about, like I said, is degrees and angles. And to introduce how we draw an angle using the coordinate plane, I'm going to start with a straight line and a circle. So when we draw an angle using an x and y axis, we have what's called the initial side and the terminal side. So the question I want you to think about, it says how many degrees form a straight line? All right, so a straight line, the initial side would be this ray right here. So an angle is created by two rays. So our initial side is always on the positive x-axis. And if I want to draw a straight line, I need my terminal side to go over here. So this is called the terminal side. Okay, and the question is, how many degrees form a straight line? So we just made an angle. When we draw a straight line, it's really a form of an angle. And we start on the positive x-axis and we measure counterclockwise. And so this is a 180 degree angle. So one thing that you might recall from geometry is that the length of a straight line, the measure of a straight line is 180 degrees. All right, now let's draw another angle that creates a circle. So the initial side is going to be right here. And if we want to draw a circle, okay, we're going to start on the initial side. And we're going to go all the way around, and we're going to stop. And so, whoops. And so my circle is going to pass through 180 degrees here, and then it's going to keep going. Notice you have 180 plus 180, so there are 360 degrees in a circle. Okay, and so these measures are going to kind of help us to think about how to draw angles in the coordinate plane and how to kind of divide the coordinate plane up so that we can figure out where a particular angle measure lies. So the next question says label the quadrants of the coordinate plane. So remember that we always start in the top right. We use Roman numerals to label quadrants. So we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. And notice that we go counterclockwise. So I want you to think about starting on that positive x-axis and then moving counterclockwise. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, the other thing I want you to label on this graph is that we have this ray. If we had an angle measure that was just a ray that looked straight, like coinciding rays, we think of that as 0 degrees, okay? And then up here, we would have a 90 degree angle. I want you to think about the terminal side. If I started with this initial side and I wanted to draw a 90 degree angle, then my second side would go right here, okay? And then we said a straight line is 180 degrees. So if we start at the initial side and then we go straight back, there's 180. Now, what happens if we add 90 degrees again? So we've got 90, 180. This next angle is 270 degrees. And then we said if we were to complete it and go all the way around, instead of 0 degrees, a full circle would be 360 degrees. Okay, and so I want you to just kind of think about that as we move on to the next set of problems. So I've already kind of alluded to this next part, but it's talking about how to create an angle that is drawn in standard position. Okay, so again, we're focusing on drawing angles using an x and y axis. So for this next part, to just show you the idea of the angle, okay, again, this is your initial side, and then you have a terminal side. So if this, and the initial side is always on the positive x-axis. Okay, so let's pretend I had a 200 degree angle. Okay, so I would go 90, 180, and then I'd have to go a little bit past 180, and so this would be 200. Okay, and so it's helpful to remember that this is 90, 180, 270, 360. And so then if I said what quadrant does a 200 degree angle, here, let me label this. If I just said 200 degree angle, this is an example. Okay, you want to show direction. and it lands in quadrant number 3. So those are some questions that you can possibly be asked. Now, angles can be positive or negative, and the sign of the angle tells what direction the ray rotates, so either clockwise or counterclockwise. So the angles I've mentioned so far have been positive, and we've drawn them. We've drawn the terminal side by going counterclockwise. So positive angles rotate in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, so let me give you another example. What if I asked you to draw a 300-degree angle? Okay, we always start our angles on the positive x-axis. That's your initial side. Okay, and then I know that this down here is 270 degrees, and I know an entire circle is 360 degrees. And so I know that my angle, my terminal side, is going to land in the 4th quadrant, and it's going to be somewhere in here. Okay, and I have to show the direction. I have to show that this is a positive angle. And so I start my circle and I show the direction. And then this arrow that we put at the end is also very important, because that arrow right here at the end shows what direction you're going. Okay, so the 300-degree angle is the one that starts here and then goes counterclockwise and ends here. Okay. Now, we can also have negative angles, and negative angles rotate in a clockwise, whoops, I was trying to highlight, they rotate in a clockwise direction. Okay, so negative angles rotate in a clockwise direction. So let's pretend I want a negative 100-degree angle. Okay, I'm still going to start on my positive x-axis right here. Okay, but instead of going counterclockwise, I need to rotate 100 degrees clockwise. So this would be 90 degrees clockwise, and I need to go about 10 degrees past that. And so my terminal side is also going to land in the 3rd quadrant, and this time when I draw my direction, notice my arrow is pointing in the opposite direction. Okay, so let me give you just one more example. What if I asked you to graph a negative 180-degree angle? Okay, so I would start here. I would go 180 degrees clockwise, and my angle would land right there. So that straight line, but notice that straight line is different than if I asked you to graph positive 180 degrees. The only difference, and this is why it's important, is that when I draw my direction line, it goes in the opposite direction. So the purple one I just drew there is positive 180, and then that orange one I had is really negative 180. So when you're asked to draw an angle, make sure you include the direction. All right, so let's practice drawing some angles, okay? So a 100-degree angle, that one should be pretty simple. We're going to start on the positive x-axis. We know this is 90 degrees, and so we need to go a little bit beyond 90 degrees. And then again, it's super important to draw the direction. Okay, so the next one, negative 85 degrees. And so I'm going to start on the positive x-axis. Negative 85 would be just shy of negative 90. And so I'm going to draw my terminal side right about there. We're just sketching, so it's close enough. And then your direction needs to be clockwise. Now the next one's a little challenging. It says 560 degrees. So what's going to happen here, an entire rotation around the circle is 360 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to show that we're going to go all the way around, but then we need to keep going. So to figure out how much further we need to go, we're going to subtract 360 from 560, and we get 200 degrees. So basically, to draw this angle, we need to make one revolution around the circle. That's 360 degrees. And then we need to go an additional 200 degrees. So I've got my one loop is 360, and then I've got another 180, and then another 20 to get an extra 200. Okay, again, it is important that you show that it's gone around. The only way to show that is to do this little loop-de-doo right here. Okay, so when you draw your angle, make sure you always put the direction and the number of times that the angle has gone around. All right, and then the last one here, we've got negative 240 degrees. So we start on the positive x-axis. This would be negative 90. This is negative 180. and this would be negative 270. And so you're going to go back past negative 180, and then we got to go a little further. This is going to land in the second quadrant, and I have to make sure my arrow points clockwise. All right, so that's how we draw angles, positive and negative, and we can have angles over 360. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is something called coterminal angles. And the key to coterminal angles is that they look the same. If you were to take away your direction arrow and take away the number of times something rotates or the number of revolutions, these angles, coterminal angles, have the same initial side and they have the same terminal side. Okay, so for example, a 45-degree angle, positive 45-degree angle, okay, looks like the pink angle that I highlighted. Starts on the initial side, ends at 45 degrees. But notice that that angle can also be called a negative 315-degree angle, because negative 315 starts on the same initial side and ends with the same terminal side. So coterminal angles have the same initial side and the same terminal side. And so if we take out the direction arrows, they look identical. Kind of like a good example would be back here. Positive 180 and negative 180 are called coterminal because they have the same initial and same terminal side. Okay, so the last set of examples, we're going to find one positive and one negative angle that is coterminal with the given angle. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and draw my given angle, 90 degrees. So I have my positive x-axis is my initial side, and then I've got 90 degrees. So if I want a positive coterminal angle, I need to draw another angle that starts here and ends here. And it needs to be positive this time. So if it needs to be positive, what we're going to do is, so this is the angle that we have, 90 degrees. I can't have the exact same angle, but what I can do is I can go all the way around the circle one time, and then I can add an additional 90 degrees. And notice that if I do that, I have the same initial side, and I have the same terminal side. And so I have to add, I'm going to go around the circle once, and I get back to my starting spot, and then I'm going to add an additional 90 degrees. And so 450 degrees looks the same as 90 degrees. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take away what I just drew, just to give you a clean slate for the next part. Okay, so now I want to draw a negative angle that starts here and ends here. It's got to have the same initial and terminal side. Okay, so it has to be negative, so it needs to go counterclockwise. So I just need an angle that looks like this. Okay, well, this would be negative 90. This is negative 180. If we subtract 90 again, we get negative 270. And so a negative coterminal angle would be negative 270 degrees. And so the key is that all three of these angles, 90 degrees, 450, and negative 270, they all start and end at the same spot. So the next one, 60 degrees. So start on the positive x. A 60-degree angle looks like this. If I want another positive angle that looks like that, I can start on the positive x-axis. I can go all the way around one time, and then I can go an additional 60 degrees. And so I'd have to add 360 plus 60, and we get 420. So 420 degrees is coterminal with 60 degrees. And then if I want a negative angle that has the same starting and ending spot, okay, this time I want to start here, and I got to go backwards and stop here. Okay, so this is a negative direction. So negative 90, negative 180, negative 270. If this is 60 degrees, then that means that this has to be an additional negative 30. So negative 300 degrees. The easiest way to actually do that is if this is positive 60 and the entire circle adds up to 360, then you should hopefully see that this right here has to be negative 300. Okay, I'm almost done, honey. One more thing. Okay, and then the last one, negative 140 degrees. So we're going to start right here at the positive x-axis. And then we need to go back 90 and then past that. Now this would be negative 180, so we're going to go, it's going to be in the third quadrant here. And your angle is going to look something like this. Okay, so now we want a positive angle that starts and stops at the same place. So we want to start here, but we want to go this way. So again, if this is negative 140, then the entire circle is 360 degrees. So to figure out this distance here, just do 360 minus 140, and you get 220 degrees. And so your positive coterminal angle is 220 degrees. And then if you want a negative coterminal angle, okay, just like we did with that positive one, we're going to start at the same spot, okay, and we have to go in a negative direction, so we're going to go all the way around once, that's negative 360 degrees, and then we're going to go in another negative 140. So we're going to go around negative 360, and then we're going to go around negative 140, and so your answer would be negative 500 degrees. Okay, and these last set of problems, all 6 of these, there's actually infinitely many correct solutions, but these are the ones where you would just go around one time or just find the corresponding positive to create a circle. So I hope that lesson made sense. Go ahead and try the assignment, and we will review in my next lesson. Thanks. Have a great day.